Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the podcast. If you're catching this, I guess we are on episode 9, which is hard to believe. And I've been waiting for weeks, really since talking to Gabe. I wish that we could have had Gabe and Corey back to back. Those two are brothers. And in my mind and in my heart, they are one linked together. And so today it's great to welcome Corey Shores to the podcast. Corey is a dear friend. We know him. I met him through mission work, but quickly we realized that we're kindred spirits over our love for Brendan Manning and Rich Mullins, and just a heart for Jesus and for Jesus to be known. Corey and his wife Hannah, I guess we've known you since before you were even married, but their daughter Ruthie Faye, they live there in Georgia. Corey, welcome to the podcast. Thank you for making time to come on.
Thanks for having me. I'm not as smooth as Gabe is at this kind of stuff, right? He's a professional, so bear with me.
Yeah, he really is a professional. Dude, I didn't know. So the thing is, typical Gabe, right? So we put the podcast out. We don't know what we're doing. We're just having conversations with really solid people and letting folks listen in on it. And I had put out a couple, and I don't even know how it came about, but Gabe being Gabe, he saw something or heard something, and he sent me a text message. And he's like, hey, I had no idea that Gabe was in the game, like a big deal in the game deal, and had this 16,000 member Facebook group and a podcast and all those things. But my point is, typical Gabe, he somehow saw that we were doing this and immediately sent a text and, hey, saw that you're doing a show. I've been doing a show for years. I would love to save you from falling into the same potholes I did. If you got time to talk, let's connect, and that's Gabe, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And so, absolutely took him up on that. I'm like, heck yes. So we had a phone call there, and then to have him on the show, I guess Gabe, is really, in a weird way, how you and I connected.
Yeah.
I can't tell you how often I think of worship in St. Philip. Probably realistically, literally for real, every couple of months. I think of those sessions with the space between, because it was an abnormal week for you all, right? So all summer you had youth groups and high schoolers and stuff, and then there was this one odd week. And there was nobody else there but us, and it was college kids.
Yeah.
And one of my first, memories of you is authenticity, which I loved. Did you see that on the screen?
Yeah, I didn't do that. I'm glad you saw that. I thought I was at a Dave show or something. What is that? Mine doesn't do it.
What in the world? Anyway, so the people that are listening, like on iPod or podcast, Apple Pod or whatever, they're not going to understand what we're talking about. So I just made a thumbs up sign subconsciously, and the computer gave a. Is that a emoji? Is that what that was?
I don't know what. It's like a think bubble. Yeah.
Yeah, think bubble with a thumbs up, which is scary. But anyway. Back to, so the authenticity is kind of take one to know one, and I would be interested to know, that's a great place to start. Like in your young life, however far you want to go back, formational years, like when I met you, the thing that drew me to you was you didn't have any time for the BS. Like you were in this season of life where it was like, I want Jesus, and I want to do life with other people who are not worried about any of the rest of it. but just this authenticity. So I think that's a great place to start because I don't know this part of the story. Actually, it'll be good for me too. Tell me, uh, share with us your story. Like, what got you to that place, even where our lives intersected, and you were to this place of vulnerability and authenticity and shucking. You know what Manning would call the imposter.
Yeah. Well, I'd probably have to go back to the very beginning, which is, my dad's a Southern Baptist preacher, so I grew up in a very small town, Somerville, Georgia.
Yeah, home of 4L Rodeo Company.
There we
Oddly
go.
enough,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
But as you know, nothing there really.
Mm-hmm.
But
Mm-hmm.
everybody knows everybody's business. If anybody's listening to this from a small town, they know what I'm talking about. But my dad was a pastor, and it was all I remember. It's wild looking back. Some of my earliest memories was, it was always the church, but it was always more about, we got to do this. We have to be this way. We need to present this way. And my parents were great people. They were nice people. They were just doing the best they knew how, right?
Oh, yeah.
That's what everybody else was doing.
Yeah.
And so just growing up around that, and I love everybody, all my friends from school, the people I went to church with. But I hit a point when I realized that wasn't for me. A lot of it was reading Ragamuffin Gospel, right? A lot of it was my butt getting land. I get a call. I had a little. There was a worship band I played with, and we played an event for Mount Bethel. St. Philip was a satellite campus, or something like that.
Which Gabe led us through. Gabe talked a little bit about that.
Okay, so I won't go into all that. But
or how y'all ended. Basically they were telling Gabe, you can't do that here, but you can go do that down there.
Yeah, you can go hang out with Corey. We don't care. It's just laughable that I really thought, I was going to be the next Third Day or something like that. It's funny how in my early 20s, that's really what my heart's desire was. Mm-hmm. And that landed me playing some stuff for Mount Bethel, which then landed me, I get a call. Hey, you want to be a worship leader at Mount Bethel's satellite campus? Yes. I didn't pray about it. I didn't think about it. I didn't have to. I was selling furniture at Rent-A-Center. Right?
Yeah, yeah.
I was 22 years old dealing with all that kind of stuff. So I just said yes. Come to find out, they were going to pay me peanuts, and I was also going to have to be the youth pastor. And for a couple of years, I was going to have to be the janitor.
So explain to people, because I know and some of our people, but contextually describe St. Philip, please.
Yeah. So St. Philip is basically the antithesis of how I grew up. Right?
Yeah.
It was a church that had been very successful in the 70s and 80s, but then is it gentrification? Is that what happened when the well-off white people left?
Yeah, generation that turnover where the Anglos,
right. And so the church died because they didn't want to reach the community, and so they were going to reach younger people. They didn't really have a plan, Mount Bethel, but they took the church over. And I was part of that master plan was to bring me in to be the worship leader, but then they also made me the youth pastor, which I didn't think I was equipped for. But also, the big key about this was St. Philip was all African-American, community-wise. And I didn't grow up around any African Americans, really.
Not in Somerville, Georgia, yeah.
No, I knew one or two, but not close. And I just had no idea, And at that time, I firmly believed that if you gave me my guitar, I could go anywhere and lead what I thought was worship. I learned later it wasn't quite that, but I thought, you give me that guitar, I can handle it. Well, God puts me in this place where once we started reaching out to the community, young men especially would come in. They did not give a crap about how I sang or how I played guitar. They did not care. even the best I had wasn't what they liked.
Yeah.
And so I had to strip that away, and I didn't know what to do because really I just thought, well, and I don't say this for a pity party or to make any other people that I had in my life feel bad or look bad, but I basically decided, okay, well, I don't know what I'm going to do, but I'm going to do the opposite of what was done for me, right? I'm going to try to make these young people feel accepted. I'm going to try to find a place for them. And I had no clue. I mean, I messed up a lot, but before long, we had a core group of about 5 or 6 guys, and just they became like family. And then we set some vision out. We set some ideas. We were right by a high school that was a really large high school, Osborne High School.
Yeah.
And we just started opening up on Tuesdays right after school. Got some video games in there, got some snacks, got some food. And we would feed a lot of kids, too many kids. Now that I know about, like, I can't believe nothing crazy happened, right?
Yeah,
and I'm sure crazy stuff happened that I never hoped to know about. Because the things I know about would blow your mind, but goodness gracious. But yeah, that first year especially, I want to tell you a real quick story just to,
it doesn't even have to be quick. Just give it to us.
I was just egotistical, you know, I play the guitar and sing. Well, I was the best worship leader in Summerville, Georgia, I guess, maybe, but I don't know. There might have been 2 of us, right?
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, I'm in Marietta, which to me was like Hollywood.
Yeah, for real. I mean, real talk. That's
When I got that call to work for Mount Bethel, I just saw the stairs, right, and where I thought I was going to be. I thought, well, that's about right here. Then this will lead. Man, this is happening, right? But what needed to happen happened, but. Probably about 3 or 4 months in, again, for them to be able to pay me what they said they'd pay me, I had to be the janitor, clean stuff up. I'll never forget, got a call from the guy who was the pastor at the time, and he said, hey, there's a dead raccoon in our parking lot. You've got to dispose of him. And I might sound like I know what to do with the dead raccoon, but I don't.
You do. So how did it play out?
Well, so just imagine I got a shovel. That's a good logical first step. Found a shovel, and it was the summertime too, unfortunately.
Ooh.
So I scraped that raccoon off. It didn't go easy. And this is actually what the pastor told me to do. There was so the main road's here, and then the little side road where you pull in to St. Philip.
Yeah.
Across the way, there was a church, and then there was like a fence with a lot of woods. He said, scrape it up and throw it behind the woods. So I did that. Now, you know this, but you also got to remember, this is 2010, and I weighed about 350 pounds.
Yes, you did.
And so here I am in the summer, just sweating my butt off, scraping this thing, and I'm just awkward as I can be anyway. But this didn't help. And then I'm dodging traffic on that little side road with a daggum raccoon on this shovel. I guarantee you they thought, what is this white boy doing? And I just remember I thought, it's not going to get any worse than this. I don't know why I didn't quit. I don't know why. I didn't have any sense, I guess. And I just kept going. But it was, in a lot of ways, for a couple years, it felt like I was walking across the street with a raccoon on a shovel. But it ended up eventually getting to the point where some of these guys started following Jesus, and we got a core group of people that weren't perfect, but I wasn't either. And I wasn't as transparent as I wish I had been at the time. I was unhealthy with food, but I would judge a young man for coming in smelling like pot, right?
Yeah.
And so if I could undo that, I'd do it all over again. But
I'm with you.
Live and learn, right? You
and
change,
it's maturity and growth and sanctification and all of those. I just dropped a theological word. Sorry.
Well, you paid for it. You deserve
it's just
it.
growth. Yeah, right. But that was good. But it's just growth, right?
Right.
So one question I have is, how long had you been there? A, when Gabe showed up, and B, when we showed up.
Well, when Gabe was banished to St. Philip,
Yeah,
it was
that's his story. I mean, that checks out to his episode.
yeah, because he had came. M25 had been there the year before, but I didn't know Gabe. I didn't like Gabe. They came and messed with the soundboard. They didn't clean up after themselves. So, and Gabe was always nice, but I was not nice back. I just was in a different kind of place. But then I didn't have any outside of those young men, and they were kids, right? High schoolers.
Yeah.
But I didn't have any community. And I was kind of in a toxic relationship with a girl I was dating at the time. So just I wasn't in a healthy place. And Gabe pops in August of 2013. And we just instantly, something just clicked. I just, first of all, again, I don't really mess around. So I just asked him, hey, man, why are you here? Because he never came, even during M25, when they would come once a week back then. It wasn't based out of St. Philip. Okay. They would come on Thursdays. And he just showed up on a Tuesday. I'm thinking, because I was paranoid and had no self-confidence, I thought, oh, they're coming. They're going to fire me. They're going to give this to Gabe.
Do you play and sing? Yeah, I'm surprised you didn't ask him. You got a guitar?
Yeah, it's like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
But he just said, well, man, I need a place to be. And he didn't really go into details. He was guarded, as I found out. And then about a week later, we'd had lunch a couple times. We'd started hitting it off for some different things. And I just remember looking at him, and I just said, very similar to how you started your episode with him, kind of. But I just looked at him and said, hey, didn't you used to be married? I didn't know. We had been Facebook friends, I think, just from working at Mount Bethel. And so, and something about me, I think, just asking him that broke the ice.
Yeah.
And he realized he could be himself with me, vice versa.
Man. Amen.
And we just became pretty instant, like family from there on out.
Yeah. And y'all were that way when we arrived. I mean, you were going to see WWE and had Ultimate Warrior shirts or whatever it was.
It was Sting. Don't make us look like we're lame.
Sorry. See, I'm never a wrestling guy. Sting, but when we got there, the two of you were, truly, genuinely brothers.
Well, and that was just not even a year in, the first time y'all came in, because 2014, I wasn't. He already had Savannah Purdue, was her name at the time. She was the worship leader of M25 in 2014.
Okay.
But there was a couple nights that she wasn't able to lead, and so I got to lead worship with y'all. So y'all were the first.
My remembrance of that is it was so refreshing and so encouraging. And I remember after that session and our breakout, I actually told Brooke and Charity, or I don't know if Charity, whoever the leaders were, I don't remember at the time. There was such an influx and turnover. But whoever the leaders were, when we had our deal, I told them, I said, that guy was worshiping and we just happened to be in the room. And that was, in all honesty, the first time that I could say that there was no performance. It wasn't a person that was on a track or trying to do the whole thing. It literally was, what I remember was you throwing your head back, eyes closed, and just praising God. And that could have been with people in the room or not. And each session was that way. And then, do you remember, maybe we could get to it later, but do you remember, so there was, I don't know all the inner workings and the details, but there was a year that we weren't able to go back to St. Philip, I don't know, and we were actually at Mount Bethel, and we were in some other chapel or some other space. Do you remember that night?
Oh, yeah, that was, St. Philip had closed down. I was working, I was working at Mount Bethel at the time as the student worship pastor, but that's a night that I almost can That was one of the most tangible nights I felt the Holy Spirit just
Me
in my
too.
life.
Me
I
too.
remember us singing "Great Are You, Lord," which I know isn't. I mean, a billion people have sung that song, but
Over and
something, and
over,
I've
yeah.
sung it a million times.
Yeah.
But even thinking about that night with not a lot of people, right? Like I think
No.
that was it. Maybe was 15 to 20 people in that chapel, but we got to spread
Yeah.
out.
Yeah.
It was very special.
And the Spirit of God moved in there, and yeah. But for me, those first few nights or the first week there at St. Philip was that way,
Mm.
and it was. I thank you for that, genuinely, because that was the first time in my life, in ministry anyway, that I'd been in an environment where it wasn't a production.
Mm.
There was no. It was a person, a guitar, um, and and genuine worship. Um,
Yeah.
so thank you for that. And that from that point forward, any other rooms I found myself in. Now, what I will say is Connor. There's only two people that I can say that about, um, and that would be you and Connor. Um, as far as leading people, I would like to know your thoughts on this. So a lot of times I talk about worship and music specifically, and being the vehicle that picks people up on the corner of the world and ushers them in and drops them off in the throne room.
Mm.
People talk about music being worship, but music is a piece or a part of the process of worship. And what are your thoughts on that? This idea that worship can be a vehicle that picks people up on the corner of the world and ushers them into preparatory, mentally, emotionally, in a heart way, brings them into the presence of the throne.
Well, I think for me, and I want to skirt. Hopefully, I never sound pretentious, but if I do, I apologize in advance. But
You couldn't if you
music.
tried.
Oh, I could. But no, if you think about even taking church and all that stuff out of it at first, right? Music is a universal language, right?
Hmm.
Like,
Yeah,
my
yeah.
goodness, live, you can watch live videos of any of your favorite bands,
Hmm.
and they can be like, I got a buddy who saw Radiohead, and I don't necessarily get Radiohead, but he
Sure.
got to see Radiohead in Brazil.
Wow. Okay.
And these people do not speak English, but
Hmm.
they're singing every line. They're singing, I'm a creep,
Yeah,
I'm a
yeah,
weirdo.
yeah,
And I don't
yeah.
necessarily know what even that means, but the feeling is there, right?
Hmm.
So I think music does that. And of course, God created everything, especially good. And I think that feeling of unification is good. So, of
Hmm.
course, when you take some intentionality about that and you're
Hmm.
singing songs that you're inviting the Holy Spirit into, right?
Hmm.
And you're seeking out God to do something. It's going to the same way that people that don't speak a language can get the emotion.
Hmm.
People that don't know God, that's a that's a quick way to, I think,
That's
encounter the
good.
Holy Spirit.
That's good. Yeah, yeah.
And often in spite of ourselves, right? Like,
Hmm.
um, recently I've been figuring out how much back then, and even still now, but back then especially, it was like Brendan Manning talks about, his real drug of choice was a pat on the back.
Oh yeah.
So I would like to say that I sang and I worshiped back then, and it was all for God. But every part of me was thinking, man, I hope that guy that likes Dave Matthews thinks I'm good. Right? I just had to.
Yeah.
It's just that's a human condition. But I
Yeah.
think
Yeah.
fighting through it, right? Like, not to talk in a circle, but I heard there's a singer, Shawn Mendes.
Oh yeah.
He's a huge singer,
Hmm.
and he grew up agnostic. And I heard him talking about hearing Maverick City sing, I think at the Grammys,
Okay.
and how it was the first time in his life he thought, oh, there's a God.
Hmm.
And he said he didn't know what to do with it,
Hmm.
but he heard Gyra. He heard them sing Gyra.
Hmm. Hmm.
And he didn't even know the song. There's a video clip if people Google it, but how much more does he love you? How much more does he love you? And he said, it just blew his mind. And he felt the
Hmm.
Holy Spirit, right? A
Hmm.
kid, a guy who grew up agnostic, sitting here at the Grammys, having an encounter with the Holy Spirit because people got out of their own way, right?
Yeah.
And just decided, hey, we're going to just worship God. So that to
Yeah.
me is what we need to do.
Yeah.
That's what I try to do now.
Yeah. So where are you now? I don't want to jump too far ahead in the
Yeah.
story because at some point I want to get to you and M25 and Hannah
Yeah.
and just kind of God's faithfulness in your life in that way. But we can hop back to that. Where are you now? What are you doing now? What's that season like? What's it been like? What is it like?
So I'll just tell you, I was wondering if this was gonna. So so my dad, I'm gonna go for it.
Sure, go
So
for
this
it.
is a long answer. I'm sorry, but it's gonna be worth it. I promise you.
Go for it.
My dad, his birth mom passed away when he was 7 or 8 years old. He was in the car with his little brother, and she got hit by a train, and they were in the car with her.
Oh no.
He only had a broken arm. His little brother had scratches, but she passed away.
Oh no.
Then his dad started abusing drugs and alcohol, and then started abusing them. Okay. Severely, really bad stuff happened. His little brother ended up passing away from abuse. I believe, and his name was Danny, and I think it was a couple years living in that abuse. My dad got pulled out of it by a Southern Baptist preacher from Rome, Georgia. They lived in New Orleans at the time.
Okay.
So that's how my dad, then that pastor ended up going to Somerville, Georgia. That's where he met my dad met my mom, fell in love, they made their life in Somerville. Well, my dad, he was never going to beat me, right? He wanted that to stop. But he made his idea, his best laid plan was to, he sat me down in first grade. I got a little bit of trouble, and he said, Corey, I'm not going to abuse you, but if you're going to be a bad boy, and he drove me to the Family and Children's Services of Somerville, Georgia, and he said, I don't want to, but I'll put you up for adoption if you're bad.
What in the world?
He's doing the best he could.
Yeah,
I know that now.
No,
What I didn't know was my mama had no idea about that. Like I just remember, and I remember like the next time, like I talked in school or something, just this fear.
Yeah.
Right? This fear of like, oh no, I'm never going to see my mama again. Things like that. And again, in the past year, some things happened, and I realized how big of a deal that was, how I couldn't just sweep that under the rug, and how a lot of the approval stuff came from a place of that foundation as a first grader. You shouldn't ever be thinking something like that. But that's what I thought. And so that it was never enough, right? Like there weren't enough pats on the back for me to feel good. Outside of Hannah, that's a funny thing, but other relationships, that's why they didn't last, because I was just so insecure. It's part of why I weighed 350 pounds and abused food, and different things, because I just was so messed up. But this year, getting into some therapy, getting some help to get some tools about that.
Yes.
You want to know what's wild, how God is? I just went through this BetterHelp app because, like a lot of people, I always knew I needed to talk through that, but I didn't know how to get started. And so I just thought, well, I'm just going to do this app. They'll figure it out. And I got paired with a dude who I told him that story, my therapist. And that's not a normal thing to happen. I don't think parents just offer. His mom drove him, he was from New York. His mom drove him and his little brother, she was a single mom, to an orphanage and said, listen, if y'all aren't going to behave, I'll. So what are the odds that I get paired up with a therapist? And so something about that gave me this peace, and then just doing some work with that, realizing what God had for me. Really in the past year, I've been able to lead worship and just live from this place of freedom that I didn't know was possible, man. It's so
Wow.
cool. I'm not playing the part of free, right? And it is, I feel like a better dad, a better friend, a better husband.
Wow.
I didn't know, and so when you ask me where I am, I kind of had to, it wouldn't make sense unless you
No.
knew the other.
And that's incredible. How old are you?
I'm 38.
38. So from 5 or 6 or whatever, hop forward 32. No, what is that? Yeah, 30, whatever the math is. 30 some years, 33 years, 33 years. So what's that freedom feel like? What is it like to experience that, not in the head, but like in the inner recesses, like down in the core of your being, what I would call your knower?
Yeah.
What is it like to know that freedom in your knower?
It's just, it's like a tingle, the first thing that came to my mind is, that little move Dave will do on stage sometimes, like if everything's good, and not necessarily even during the song, but like after a song, like after it's really hit, and you go,
yeah, I'm with you.
It's kind of like that,
Yeah.
It's just like, oh my goodness,
Yeah.
this is how life's supposed to be, right?
Yeah.
And
yeah.
and I'm not forcing it. I'm not. There was so many things, right? Like I was just such insecurity, because I thought every second of every day I was trying to have to earn things. And I'm so thankful that I was probably an addict with food for a while.
Sure.
But I'm thankful I never got addicted to other things, because I think a trauma like that could open other doors. But like now, it's just so cool to feel this free, and to feel, to not have to realize this is all from God, right? And instead of, I do wish I had experienced it earlier, but just being thankful that now I can look at Ruthie and realize like, oh, no, baby girl, you do it, this is always, this is home for you. I'm always going to love you, but more than that, God's always going to love you, right? You're not a bad girl because you do a bad thing or a wrong thing either. Like there's so many different things. And me and my dad have talked a lot about it, and he's got that, he's never went to a second of therapy, right? And he doesn't think he can, especially just with a lot of different things. And I'm not going to force him into anything, and I don't want to make him feel bad, but we've talked about it.
Sure.
And I get that he was just doing the best he could, but he's so happy for me too. That's a beautiful thing.
And what an incredible gift. We talk about authenticity in relationship. What an incredible gift to have that type of relationship with your dad, even though you may not agree, even though, your desire would for him to experience freedom, and maybe through counseling, maybe not. I don't know. I can't speak for you, but even to have the dialogue, right? So like a couple years ago, my dad went through a bout of cancer and some intense surgeries. This is like 2017, and through all that, our relationship went to this different level, to where he began to ask spiritual questions, and I was able to try to come alongside him in any way that I could. But it's so cool. I guess what I'm getting at is, we talk about authenticity and community, and it's interesting when that authenticity is within the family, within parent, father and son. And I don't know if that's an age thing. If we grow to this place to where we hit a specific age, and our parents do, and so that authenticity kind of develops. I'm not sure, but I believe it to be a gift, to where we can sit down and have some of these honest, open, authentic, oftentimes hard conversations, and then understanding that with our own kids. What a gift to be that far ahead of the game with Ruthie Faye. She's 2.5.
Yeah.
Yeah, 2.5 years old, man. Those formational years and her childhood and adolescence, and as a dad, for you to have that freedom,
Yeah.
to be able to love her well and raise her without any of that projection.
Mm.
What a gift.
Yeah. Because, I mean, and you talk about the freedom, the things, because for so long so I've been vocationally leading worship since 2010. Okay. And
Wow.
so
Yeah.
for most of that time, I didn't feel good enough, right? Like I didn't know, because, and there were periods, because music is just so subjective, right? Like there's not one voice that everybody's like, that's it, so there's going to be people like things and they don't. And it just feels really cool to realize that's not the point.
Yeah.
For me, right? Like I want to, in a real way, help people experience God. I want to be helping them, especially the people that don't know God, but just not put on a production, not put on a show, just get up there and sing to God, and just let that be enough. And it's really cool because the past year it's been enough. Now the craziest thing about it that really cracks me up, Ben, is this past year doing that, I've been getting all these freaking compliments that I was chasing my whole life.
Wow. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I was chasing them so much at Mount Bethel. I was even chasing them my first couple of years at Canton. In February, I'll be there 4 years. And I just never felt enough. Time is so weird, but
time goes fast, dude.
All of a sudden, I'm getting these nice things said and these things that, but I don't, it's not that I don't care. I appreciate it, but it's not the point anymore.
Yeah.
And I think and so I'm thankful, right? Yeah.
You've crossed that threshold, and I'm not saying this in a judgmental way or in any kind of way. I'm not saying this in any kind of way, but for people who have not crossed that threshold, they do not understand the people who have crossed that threshold.
Yeah.
So when they come and they begin to compliment and laud and all of those things, and you're like, praise God, amen, thank God. It's not, you're not speaking the same language, and I'm not saying that in any kind of way. I'm just saying once we cross that place, if somebody's been blessed, praise God. And it really is not about the vessel. And there are people in our lives. It's kind of take one to know one. I'm sure you could sit down and talk about people who are wired that way. But people who are not don't get it. And,
and I'm so glad that I wasn't a better singer. or that I didn't get that earlier, because maybe I wouldn't have done the work.
Yeah, what I would say is you are an incredible singer. And I'm not saying that. We've just talked about crossing that threshold, but I can't let that go. You have a gift. I'll say that.
Well, I appreciate it. But again, so what happened in January was I had a seizure, and it's been, have had every 2 to 3 years since 2014. And one thing that there wasn't a clear trigger this time. We did a lot of praying, and we noticed with every one, there had been big periods of stress. The past 4 years would wake up 4 a.m. or so, have a hard time. I talked to my doctor about it. The doctor was just like, well, you're on the other side of 35. This might just be life for you. And wildest thing is, I felt the Lord. It was on Ash Wednesday, and I was singing "I Surrender All" at the service.
Wow.
And I just remember almost as audible as a boy that grew up Southern Baptist can hear the Lord
Yeah,
without having a heart attack. It was just like a.
Come on.
It was just like a. All to Jesus, I surrender all. And it was just like a, but do you?
Yeah.
Because you're trying to figure out why you're having these seizures, right? And you're having seizures every 2 to 3 years, but there's people that have seizures 2 or 3 times a day.
Yeah.
And so get over it, right? Like maybe just try to figure out like how you can be the best. And that was kind of what led to some therapy. That was what led to some different. The wildest thing is, pretty soon after that, there haven't been many sleepless nights. Wow. After some real surrender, some real, it was the Holy Spirit. And again, to this point, and Hannah talks about it, she felt pretty instantly like she had a different kind of husband, right? Where I would be a little high strung sometimes, easy to get, not at her, but pissed off at situations, right?
Sure.
Like,
oh, yeah.
These people don't appreciate me, or blah, blah, blah. How dare this person drive like this on the road?
Yeah.
All of a sudden, Hannah was just like, it almost like probably to her felt like I'd had a couple cocktails, but all the time. Yeah. But it was just like, no, that threshold, right? Like hearing you talk about it, what the Lord did through that. And so we've talked about it recently, and it was just like, well, yeah, that sucked. But I'm not here if I hadn't been there. And I'd rather be here because I don't do this now. I don't live this way with hopes of, it might have started, if I'm being honest, with a little bit of, oh, I don't want to be so stressed, right? I started doing some mindfulness and a little bit of like stuff like that. And it was, oh, this will be a tool that can help me not be stressed. But what's the wildest thing about, 11 months into it is just like, oh, no. I'll have all the seizures I'm supposed to have, right? Like it doesn't matter. I don't, the same way that I don't necessarily care how somebody thinks of a worship set or a song I wrote or whatever. It's the same way with seizures. It's a cool thing. That being said, I mean, I'm still self-conscious from time to time. I can think like, what do I wear on a podcast? Do I wear a Simplify shirt? I don't want it to seem like I'm trying too hard.
No, I get that. I mean, that's part of when we revamped this and brought it back, dude, all the pretension. The reason it wasn't sustainable when we first tried this, the first 2 tries, is because of all that.
Yeah.
It was the thoughts going into it, the show notes and the direction and the post-production and all the stuff. And then you get to this place and you're like, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what shirt you have on. It doesn't matter what hat you have on.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. Before we move forward, and I know we're going to.
Yeah.
But so so you said the last 11 months with Hannah, it's been like you've had a few cocktails, which triggered my memory. So Gabe told me that I have to have your father-in-law on the show because he's building community, authentic community around bourbon.
Yeah.
So we got to make that happen. That's all I want to say about it.
Yeah.
I just want to put it on your radar. What's his name?
Tony.
Talk to Tony, plant the seed, ask him if he would be open. I would love to interview Tony, have him on and just talk through what it's like to build authentic community with no strings attached around a common interest. And then if those relationships turn into a Christ-centered deal, awesome. And if not, that's okay too. I really just want to build community. Yeah, it's awesome.
It's cool.
So, okay, that's it about that. I just wanted to put that out there. Gabe told me about that, and Gabe is freaking amazing. And in that episode, that's one thing that he said. He said, you really ought to interview Gabe's or Corey's father-in-law.
Yeah.
So
Well, and I want to say, and then we'll get back on track or whatever track is. We don't care. But I remember because I'd listened to the previous episodes and they were really cool. I think y'all got close in some of the early seasons, like talking about Connor's weight loss and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But that first episode with Connor of this revamp, I was like, oh, this feels like we're sitting around, like I'm doing a retreat and we're just hanging out, and this is afterwards and we're just talking. Right. Yeah. And so I really have enjoyed it.
I can't tell you how many people have texted or DM'd or whatever to say thank you. Like this feels like I'm sitting in a room with y'all.
Yeah.
And so if that's the vibe, awesome. That I think our culture craves authenticity. Both inside and outside the church. And what I will say is to be authentic is to be vulnerable. And it's when we are authentic and or vulnerable and it bites us, human nature then is to go into full-blown defense mode.
Yeah.
And I think the pushback for us must be to continue down the road of authenticity the best way that we know how. And so you mentioned you were at Canton now. And so what is that like? I mean, so you've been, you talk about St. Philip, which is where I met you.
Yeah.
And unless people have been there, really don't have a picture in their mind. And I have, legal disclaimer, from time to time, I'll pull up the Canton live stream, but just listen to you play and sing and then turn it off. Not fanboying at all, but just like, I miss you.
Yeah.
I love to hear you. So just talk about that where you are now, where you were, where you are, God's faithfulness in the middle. It's interesting when we relinquish and open our hands and relinquish what we think we want or where we think we need to go. It's like the desires of our hearts find us.
Yeah. So, I'd served at a church in between Canton and St. Philip where everybody on stage was a professional musician, paid to be there. And a lot of churches do that. I'm not going to judge him. It was, and so technically it was easy, right? Mm-hmm. Like it's going to sound right. That's not the case at Canton. It's volunteer driven. It's just a worship team. It's a family. We have last year, it was a game changer. We started in between rehearsal and the service. We read a psalm a week, and we have a life group with the band and the media team, and we talk about what stood out from the scriptures to us. We share life, and that has been transformative, right? Mm-hmm. And the first, up until January of this year, it was a typical. I didn't hear a lot of people sing with us. It was just, it wasn't dead, but it wasn't alive either. If that makes sense.
Yeah, I get that.
And so it was just, and a lot of that was COVID. And, I got to Canton 6 weeks before COVID hit. So it was, I was the new guy for like a year and a half. Really. Yeah. And so, but, January, this was a couple.
I was the new guy. I was the new guy for a year and a half. That's gold. I get that.
But you always want to, the musician in you always want it to be as tight as possible, as excellent as possible, especially when it's easier for me to lead worship just me and a guitar, if I'm being honest, because I know where I want to go. I know, you do just have to plan out more, right? Mm-hmm. Like when it's involving anybody else, even one other person. Mm-hmm. But having this band, developing the trust through the small group and doing life together, being vulnerable. January, there was a point, early January, where I was so obsessed with, I was wanting them to get the builds right? Because it does matter in music, right? You want to, if you're always here, then you're really always here.
Yeah.
And so I was trying to get the bass player to not, I would even type out an email saying, okay, and bass player come in at verse 2, stuff like that. And it was improving some. And all of a sudden, it was one of them mornings, right? Like where I was just, and again, this is before therapy. This is, this was a couple weeks before a seizure. So looking now, I was so stressed out, right? Because I was trying to still impress people.
Yeah.
About halfway in of that. But I looked at this sweet, he's in his late 60s. He's a nice guy, Tom. And we're playing this song, and it starts off as a lot of worship songs do, very soft in the beginning. And old Tom is just thumping that bass. Boom, boom, boom. And I just stopped everything. And I swear, Ben, I thought this sounded nice in my head.
Whatever comes next is not going to be good.
I said, do y'all even read my emails? And in my head, I meant that as in, is there a better way to get the information to you? Thankfully, though, thankfully, there had been some, because if I'd been Tom, I probably would have just took my bass and went home.
Walked off, yeah, for
right?
Sure. Yeah.
And but I from talking to him afterwards, he knew me, right? He knew through not just showing up and playing music and then leaving, but I apologized instantly. As soon as the words, it's one of those things where you say the words and you can see them, like that weird thumbs up bubble that you had earlier.
Yeah.
And I couldn't get them back in, right?
Yeah.
And so I just instantly said, I'm so sorry.
Yeah. Which isn't exercised enough in our society.
No. And I owned it, and I just said to the whole team too, right? In my microphone, I didn't just pull them aside. I said, that's not how I intended it, but that doesn't matter. It wasn't, I shouldn't have said that in any way. I care about y'all more than I care about excellence in music. And I honestly don't think God cares that much about when the bass comes in.
Yeah.
And something in the atmosphere about that started something. And all of a sudden, these daggone Methodists just started singing a couple of weeks later.
Really?
I don't know how to explain it. I think part of it was I wasn't so uptight. It was some of that, the therapy stuff, the different things.
Yeah.
But like, there has been a movement of the Holy Spirit at this church. Things that I would have never believed. Some spontaneous stuff. Some really cool stuff. But I could take it back to that time of just owning, messing up, not leading right. Because I've been led wrong, right? And so I fell into some of those same traps. And so from that moment on, I don't write a lot of emails explaining when the bass comes in.
Yeah.
I just kind of say, hey, y'all, listen to this. Figure it out. Let me know if you got any questions.
Yeah.
And what's cool is the team has grown. It's getting deeper. But the coolest thing is just now we've started doing a monthly, and I love it, a night of worship in our chapel that I wish you lived closer. Sometime if you're ever in town, we'll get you there. You would love it. But it's just me and a guitar, no sound system, no lyrics, no pro presenter. And we've got some pillars that we're going to pray through during the night. But basically, I don't plan a set. We just kind of go, and based on how people pray, we just lean into whatever God's doing. And I wouldn't have believed that, right? But to see what God's doing at a church that was pretty rigid a few years ago, right? And it's just, I can't get the credit for that, but I'm really happy to be a part of it.
Yeah. And so in that, kind of in that vein, let's talk about the difference between perfectionism and excellence. Like you used both of those terms just a few moments ago, kind of different times. Um, I think I think people mistake those,
Mm.
and they're not the same. So,
No.
and you can tell me what you think. My thoughts are perfect doesn't exist. I mean, he did, and they killed him, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, but we have so many people that strive for perfection, and then the water gets muddied between perfectionism and excellence. And I think that when we are whatever we may do or be doing, in ministry or whether it's vocational or otherwise, I don't think it's bad to strive for excellence. Certainly not at the detriment of people, obviously, but to have that heart cry, that desire to offer our best from a place of humility, understanding that we are the created, worshiping the creator, but attempting to do so to eliminate mediocrity. And I think that you talk about freedom and this facade of control's a hoax, right? So people think, oh, I relinquish control. You never had control. Control does not exist in our world. By our, I mean human beings, not people who work in vocational ministry. But you know uh, when we relinquish that facade, but we get to this place where our heart cry is that the created honors the creator with everything that we are, and with not mediocrity, not cramming, not um, you know uh, procrastination and last minute preparation. It's kind of like, when you made that jump from religion to relationship. Um,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? And
Oh yeah.
and sometimes that pendulum swings too far in grace. I
Hmm.
don't know if that, I'd have to think through that. But when people make that dive at first, you've done it, I know, because I know your story. I've done it, I know, because you know my story. But we go way out, the pendulum swings out there, and then we kind of come back to this place of health, I think, in our growth.
Hmm.
Um, uh, some people who get to the point in development where they are willing to relinquish the facade of control, when that pendulum swings too far, they release excellence and are okay with mediocrity.
Right.
What do you think of that?
Well, I think for me, what I know is when I put in the work, right,
Mm-hmm.
of
Yeah,
anything,
yeah, yeah,
where music or not, right,
yeah, yeah.
exercise, relationship with my wife, relationship with
Mm-hmm.
my friends, to me, putting in the work bears fruit,
Yeah, yeah,
right?
yeah,
But
yeah.
but putting in the work, especially if we're going to take it to music, right? Because that's what we
Mm-hmm.
talked about.
Mm-hmm.
Instead of just obsessing about it, well, I'm gonna practice these songs, right?
Yes, yes.
I'm gonna know these songs
Mm-hmm.
so that on Sunday morning I can worship,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like I can be free, and I'm gonna put in the work, clanging and banging
Mm-hmm.
during
Yeah,
the
for
week,
real. Yeah.
so that on Sunday morning when those lights go on and the people are there,
Mm-hmm.
I've done this for an hour a song at least, right? And
Mm-hmm.
I've heard another worship leader talk about that's a game changer. And so for me, that's excellence. That's
Mm-hmm.
me bringing my excellent, right? And if I'm
I
playing a lead
agree.
guitar
Yeah.
part, I need to play it enough that I don't have to think about it, or I don't need to play it, right?
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
um, because if I'm guessing, or if
Mm-hmm.
again, and I've done it both ways, right? Like
Sure.
that's the problem with when something can come natural to you
Mm-hmm.
is you get by on that, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so but now getting oh no, I don't have to do this to be approved. I'm already approved. Like screw that. That's off the table, right? Like that's done.
Yes.
Now I do this to not be a distraction to other people.
That's good. Yeah, yeah.
So that I'm going to put in the effort so that I can just be, I'm going to use a real Southern Baptist term, but a conduit for the Holy Spirit, right? Because I'm not distracted by, now what's that chord again?
Yeah.
And that kind of stuff, but more the free. Now for me, that's excellence.
I would agree. Yeah.
Other people in my band, I just want to encourage them to get to their level of excellence, right? Because not everybody's going to be on the same, people are serving their church. I appreciate that. I want to help equip them. As long as I feel like somebody's giving the best they got. That's what I ask of the team. And we talk about it. We're going to really dive into it next year. I'm working with a worship coach to help me figure out some stuff that I'm really excited to unveil.
Wow.
But it's really just getting people to prepare, right? I think, again, you wouldn't expect a pastor. I know some pastors do, though, right? Like you don't prepare enough, and you get up there and you're fumbling around. And
oh yeah.
And again, the same way for a band, it's not that we have to play this just like a record, and a pastor doesn't have to write out his sermon and recite it just like he wrote it, right? God can be in the bullet points, or God can be in an essay.
The manuscript, yeah, I'm with you.
Right? It's whatever is true to you, right? Whatever is authentic to you is, and perfection will just drive you crazy. But the excellence, that drives me into more, right?
Yeah.
Like the excellence is almost like we about got there today. Cool.
Yeah, yeah. Getting closer, yeah. One of my mentors always says, put your butt in the seat. Put your butt in the seat. Set aside time. If you need to put it in your calendar, do it. Whatever you got to do, put your butt in the seat. Work on your craft. And have you ever heard of or read the book, The War of Art?
I think I've heard of it.
You should read it. For any creative, it doesn't matter if you're a musician or a painter or a sculptor or a communicator. For any creative, I cannot recommend the book, The War of Art, enough. And it's in that vein. It's in that, so oftentimes as creatives, we wait for the inspiration. And there are moments, there are seasons, there are times, days, weeks where we are inspired. But how much more are the normal times, are the what they call the common times, where we're not inspired, we may not feel it, but even in that midst, put your butt in the seat. And I think in doing that, though, right, so that's where excellence comes from. What people see of you and your team on a Sunday morning is 1/nth of, what they don't see, what they all of the things that, the small group time and the team building and the practice and all the other stuff. I think that rhythm of the consistency of working on our craft defines excellence, right? It's not perfection. Certainly not perfection. I don't think that perfect exists. He does. He does exist, but excellence we can continue to strive for, and even in our relationships, to put in that work. So we've talked 2 or 3 times about Hannah. Gosh, I love Hannah. So I don't think we've ever discussed this. Oh, yeah. I doubt maybe we have, but I doubt it. Maybe. So Hannah to me is like a real life Punky Brewster. Did you ever watch? Are you hip to Punky Brewster? Do you remember Punky Brewster?
Yeah.
Yeah. So Hannah, to me, from the time I met her, from the very beginning, pulled in the car, was it a Subaru maybe, but all the stickers on the window, and she hops out in the bright, footwear and, the hair and all the things that I'm like, this chick reminds me of Punky Brewster, like in a cool way, like the whole vibe. Um, she Hannah brings light to whatever situation she finds herself in. So, talk us through a little bit about that for people that don't know you all. Talk us through, your relationship, how you met, what that was like in the beginning, the different seasons and circumstances to where you are now.
I mean, we met through her working at M25.
Yeah.
She actually worked there the year before because she does stand out, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
She's her own person.
Yeah.
And so even before I knew Gabe, Hannah stood out. I thought, she's kind of like a hippie chick, something, I didn't really know her. I knew her car had too many stickers.
Was it a Subaru?
But the next year when I led, no, it was a Toyota Camry that she called Zago. Gonzago was his name.
I just remember the stickers.
Because, of course, she names all of her vehicles.
There were so many stickers, dude.
Oh, yeah. All the stickers. She still... she wishes she had that car. She misses it so badly.
Gonzago?
Gonzago.
Okay. I never knew that part.
I just...
Was it green?
Have
I got that right?
I mean,
was it a green Camry?
No, it was black. It was black, but I don't think she washed it a lot. It probably had like some just pollinish black,
Yeah. Okay.
But the coolest thing, the thing that stood out to me about Hannah first, and again, when we first met, I had a girlfriend. I wasn't, that wasn't anything, but she came to St. Philip every Sunday. Even when M25 wasn't based out, she would go to St. Philip. She got to know some of the young ladies at the church. She was just the real deal. And I remember that standing out to me. And then the next year, Gabe and I were really good friends. And I got invited to hang out during some of the training weeks and go hang out with them and get to know them. And the wildest thing is, I would just tell these stories during training week. You've heard a lot of my crazy stories, and I would just tell crazy, crazy stories about my life. And I will never forget this. When finally, it was the night, we call it our first date, but this happened September 24th, 2015. We had hung out a couple times and known each other for a little over a year, like really as friends. But just, I remember I finally put my arm around her. We're in a movie, watching a movie, and she looks at me, and I was kiss her in the movie theater. And she looks me in the eye and says, "Our first kiss will not be in the movie theater." And I remember thinking, "Oh man, this was a pretty classy place to have a first kiss where I'm from." But okay,
yeah.
She's from John Creek. but just we get out to the movies where we had held hands a little bit, had my arm around her. And she had heard all these crazy stories about me and just different, nothing too bad, but just I was an idiot. And she looked at me and she said, "We're going to go in my car and we're going to talk about what this means. And we're not going to leave till we figure it out."
Okay.
And so, because she had heard these stories about, like, I would I'll tell it quickly.
You don't
I'm on
have
a
to
blind
be.
date with a girl. I met her
You
at
don't.
Barnes and Noble.
You don't have to be quick.
She was no. I need to be quick with this story so I'm not incriminated. I met this girl on a blind date at Barnes and Noble in Rome, Georgia, and we're just talking. And she was nice enough, but she had terrible taste in music. And so I told her I was going to the bathroom because she was all about Rascal Flatts, and she just kept talking about Rascal Flatts. And so I told her I was going to the bathroom, and I left. And she had my number, and so she was texting me for a while, probably too long, this poor girl. Are you okay? Do I need to get you help? And I just never responded. So
she
in
thought
Hannah's
you
mind,
were in the bathroom.
she lives in the reality. Well, Hannah lives in this reality where I'm the type of guy that maybe I'll just hold your hand one time, even though we've been really good friends. And she was just like, nope, we're figuring this out.
Yeah.
And so we got married exactly 1 year later.
Wow. So I guess the conversation in the car went okay.
It went okay. We figured it out. Now the funny thing was when I proposed to her, it was at that same movie theater in East Cobb.
Gosh.
Took her there.
In the theater, or did you wait for the car?
I waited. I went to the exact same spot after a movie that she told me we're going to go to our car and not leave till we figure this out. Wow. And I got down on one knee and I pulled out the ring and I said, we're going to go in my car and we're not going to leave till we figure out what this means.
Dude, that is awesome.
Yeah, it worked.
Yeah, so far it's working. Yeah.
Yeah.
Man, so tell me about the is it a duck or a goose?
Oh, she's got this daggum goose.
What's the deal with the goose? And I see like seasonal outfits.
Yeah, she's got it's a companion of hers named Sir Goosington.
Sir Goosington.
That's his name. He's a sir.
And he has wardrobes, right? Am I wrong?
So many. She has a daggum trunk full. We don't have enough room in our house.
We need to have Hannah on a show. Hannah needs her own episode.
Yeah, I mean, she's fantastic, but she's a nut. We make a great team, but yeah, she dresses this goose up. She's got Ruthie into the goose. Ruthie's going to grow up thinking this is a normal way to live.
Yeah. Oh yeah. 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 And then
your family doesn't have a goose you dressed up
for every occasion? Yeah. But it's not just Halloween. Like I've seen the goose in like 4th of July garb.
4th of
Valentine's
July. She'll dress it up as a pilgrim
for Thanksgiving.
Yeah, Thanksgiving, Christmas obviously,
Valentine's
no,
Day. Yeah.
There's a trunk filled with outfits.
So between the goose and then Kitty Lena, isn't your cat named Kitty Lena?
Well, that's I named the cat. We got that cat.
Oh, okay.
Do you want to? Right. I'll tell you about this cat if you really want to know.
I do, man.
We were some friends of ours from Mount Bethel. We were at a student ministry Christmas party.
Yeah.
And I make a mean margarita, and I made margaritas for everybody, right? Mm-hmm. And so we'd had margaritas, and they had 2 toddler boys that were just giving this cat hell. They were putting this cat through it.
Yeah.
And they had tried to find Kitty a home and had no luck. We lived in an apartment complex, so I didn't have to worry about it because we weren't going to pay the pet fee that was crazy expensive. Mm-hmm. The cat came up the stairs eventually, and my friend Elise offered the cat to my friend Joshua, and he said, "Oh, I don't want that cat." And she said, "Well, we need to find it a home." And Hannah just looked at me with these huge eyes. and I had a margarita. It was a good margarita. And I just said, well, we could do it. So we had that cat, and the cat, they never named the cat. They just named the cat Kitty. They had this cat for like 7 years. I don't know what kind of lunatic, and I love them, but how do you not name an animal?
Yeah.
They said, oh, we just call her Kitty or Boo. And so I thought of like the Catalina wine mixer from Step Brothers. And so I just said, well, we'll call her Kitty Lena.
How many margaritas had you had?
It was just one.
Oh, yeah. So that
and a
half. So following Hannah, it's both of you actually, but it's number one is Ruthie Faye posts, and then it's pretty close between Kitty Lena and the Sir Goosington.
Yeah, she loves them both.
That's awesome, man.
I think I'm behind them, but it's there's a lot of love.
You're definitely fourth out of the. I mean, that's kind of the. In the post, at least, it's a whole vibe.
Fine.
Following Hannah on Instagram is a whole vibe. It's a whole thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
it's a lot of Ruthie, a lot of Kitty, and
and a little bit of Goosington, and then you're in there somewhere. So reeling this back in because the wheels have come completely off. In the best of ways, and we will not apologize. What about her role just in your life? You've talked about kind of this crossing the threshold and kind of coming into this place of peace. What role is Hannah played in that as a mate, as a spouse?
So as insecure as I was when we started dating in 2015, and I was insecure about everything, right? Like I was insecure about some friendships. I was never insecure about Hannah.
Wow.
I tell her it feels like it just, she always felt like home.
Wow.
And I never had to, she was the first introduction to the idea of a threshold, but I didn't realize it, right? Like I never had to do anything to impress her. It just worked. And I'm so thankful for it. I didn't know that was possible. Probably, there's been two people in my life that love came so naturally, and I was able to accept it so naturally, and it was literally my mama and Hannah, and that's just, I don't take it for granted. I still try to tell her that from time to time because life gets hectic with a baby and, a toddler, but life gets so crazy, but I don't take it for granted one second. And I'm so thankful for the patience she had with me. And it's so beautiful. She's such a pure soul.
She really is, man. Yeah. Yeah, no
again,
strings
what
attached.
What kind of person, she was driving from Johns Creek to St. Philip just because she was like, well, this is where I'm serving. I want to get to know these kids. For people that don't know, that's about an hour.
And a lot of socioeconomic change in that hour.
Right.
Yeah.
It probably couldn't be more different.
Right. Yeah. Well, so this is an aside, but was Omar in that? Was he in that first group of like five? Omar?
Oh yeah. I mean, he was not in high school, but he was.
We should have Omar on, but here's a legal disclaimer. I will only have Omar on if it's a party call and you are a mediator or somehow help me keep things. There are people in our kind of tribe who would actually enjoy seeing and hearing Omar.
Yeah, I don't think that episode would be for everybody, but for the people it would be for, they would love it.
Yes. But was he in that early group? Was Omar?
Yeah, he was pretty early. The funny thing, and he was a lot, this won't surprise, I mean, he was a good bit older than the high school guys. I think he was he's not that far away from my age. I think he's maybe 3 years younger than me.
Yeah.
But he was hanging out with these high school boys, and he was just, I'll never forget. I don't think anybody that knows Omar will forget the first time they heard that voice come out of that man.
Yes. Yes.
Right? And
Yeah.
so I was in St. Philip playing electric guitar as loud as I could. This was 2010, and just nobody was there. Nobody was around. I'm just jamming out. And all of a sudden, I hear that high,
Yeah. Yeah.
you really play guitar really good.
Yeah. And for those of y'all that don't know, Omar is he's not a small human. I mean,
No.
he is broad shouldered and just, he's not a small man.
No, and he's gotten healthy, but he's still a linebacker. Right?
That's what I'm saying. I mean, I didn't mean like as a knock.
No.
He's just not a small.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. He's just he intimidates people when he first.
That's
if
what
you're
I mean.
just seeing him,
Yeah.
If Omar was walking down an alley, you would think, oh gosh,
oh crap.
This guy could do whatever he wants. Like if he can rob me if he wants to rob me. But
and then he speaks.
Then he speaks, and you realize he wants to talk to you about something called Yu-Gi-Oh.
Yeah. I'd never heard of the old Naruto until I ran on with. That was my first introduction to anime. I still have a video on my phone of us singing Omar "Happy Birthday" in a Dunkin' Donuts, and he had on a Naruto shirt, and Naruto's face was on his belly, and I could take my hand and shake his belly, and Naruto's face would move. And so we're singing him happy birthday, and I'm shaking Naruto's face, and Omar is just laughing. It's pure joy. I need to find it and text it to you. It's on my phone.
Yeah.
It's gold.
Yeah, Omar was actually the first person to really accept me. Omar was the icebreaker, and we don't hang out as much as I wish we did. We still do a few times a year, and just because of the way life gets. But every time I do, it takes me right back there. And
you talk about real relationship. Y'all's relationship was real. I mean, was, whatever. But I mean that those years were formational, dude. I mean those seasons and times together, and it's interesting to see how the Lord works all of those things together. Just from an outsider observing your story and the role that time at St. Philip played. I mean, I'm supposing Gabe's probably still the very best friend you have, other than Hannah.
You nailed it right. I mean, Gabe and I are brothers. We're both only children, raised only children, but something just clicked with us. It's different, right? Because we love each other, and we can get on each other's nerves in a way friends, it's just it's the closest thing to a brother that we'll ever have, you know, and so, but it's unbelievable. I'm so thankful he got banished. I'm so thankful for bad leadership that kicked him there. Because again, then I think about, not to get on a different thing, but without Gabe's friendship in my life, I probably never get that push to get healthy. Mm-hmm. He just kept hearing me talk about how I knew I needed to lose weight. And he just eventually said, well, what are you going to do about it?
Mm-hmm. As only Gabe can. I mean,
right. And he didn't mean it bad. He just meant, do you want to get a plan? Same way as, hey man, you got a podcast, you got this video thing, let me help you.
Yeah. That's his heart. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I even remember when I was in that bad relationship and it was basically over. I just hadn't pulled the plug yet, and she hadn't either. And Hannah and I were very friendly. Mm-hmm. And Gabe just looked at me and said, you realize you could date Hannah if you wanted to. And he was like, but you also realize she's not the type of girl you... And I said, oh, no, absolutely not. And so literally, like, I can't... The prompting, he's, the conviction that comes through just an authentic friendship that would never... I couldn't have planned a better friend. And I got a lot of good friends and stuff. But again, I know that I could call him anytime, day or night, even though he lives 3 hours away. and he would figure out a way to be here. Our kids go trick or treating. The past 2 years, they come spend the night at our house, and we just all go trick or treating.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's sweet, dude.
Yeah.
That's incredible. That dude's been through it too. His obedience, his story and his obedience. You all inspire me, man. So, kind of wrapping up, I end every episode except for Gabe's. I forgot with Gabe. I end every episode with the same question. So the name of the podcast is Keep It Simple. And so how do you keep it simple?
Well, I don't want to overthink the simple question, do I?
There is no wrong or right. Just how do you in your day in day out life, how do you keep things simple?
Realizing that the approval that I think I need, I've already have. And so tap into that daily and try to make it constantly, and realize that before I'm anything, I'm the beloved child of God. And that's all I'll ever be, right? Like there's not these things that I can get caught up with. They're never enough. All I need is to be loved by God, and I already am.
Amen. Awesome, dude. I just before we sign off, I want to plug again. Did you say the app is BetterHelp? Is that right?
Yeah, that's what I used.
BetterHelp is what you've used, and so if you stumble upon this, whether in real time or sometime later, and you think counseling could be a door, a gateway to freedom, maybe check out BetterHelp. Maybe not, but maybe check out BetterHelp. And Corey, thank you, dude. The timing for you to be on, for us to sit down, you bless me, brother. And thank you for the time. You've been so generous and transparent, and I really, really appreciate you.
Thanks for having me. Love you.
Yep, I love you too.